Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. Anyway, today, yes, rather strange, but today I'm here to ask for maybe not your advice, but your opinions on the ideas I've got for a feature. On Twitter and on Facebook, there's a hashtag and it's TBT ThrowBack Thursday. And it kind of just spawned or kind of like sparked off a little idea in my head that I do have an immense amount of old hardware about, because although I do make videos about all the latest kit, I'm actually one of you and I do enjoy hardware. But over the years I've kind of acquired quite a lot of kit, but more strangely recently, because I obviously get sent all the new stuff, I've started buying the old stuff again. So I thought we could do a Throwback Thursday weekly or fortnightly video, maybe a little article on the website to go with it, about a selection of kit. Now this is just the tip of the iceberg. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera so that you can come in and just see better what some of the stuff that I've got here at the minute. Okay then peeps, so this is the kit in question. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and talk you through some of the stuff. Now I've got the camera as kind of far away as I can get away with, really, without, you know, you being able to see me ugly mug. So just for example, these graphics cards here are NVIDIA's, and believe it or not, they're called 7950s. It's actually an NVIDIA 7950 GX2 because there's two PCBs. There's one there and there's one there, and I did manage to get a couple of them, and I also managed to get the uber rare PCI SLI bracket as well. Now these were practically designed to be run like properly sandwiched up against each other like that. The SLI bracket isn't very long at all, but so yes, we have a couple of 7950 GX2s, and while we're talking about graphics cards, we'll go through some of the older ones. This one, which a load of the camo people would love, this is an old GTX 260. It's an Asus, dual 6-pin. It's actually got a back plate though, but lovely camo theme. It has got SLI brackets, but they're covered up. This one's actually in pretty good nick. Believe it or not, this cost me next to nothing on eBay. And you can see the lady there on the camo theme. I think she should have been the other way around, but anyway. So there's that. I actually used to have a couple of these folding at one point in time. This is a 9800 GX2. It's another Asus card, dual PCB again, 6-pin and an 8-pin. The fan actually goes out the back as well, as you can see here. Again, it's got an SLI slot, but it's all nicely covered up. But there's that. And then another Asus card that I've got. I do have a lot of Asus graphics cards. This is a 290. Not a 295, I can't remember. Could be a 295. I really can't bloody remember. I should have written on it. But anyway, I think it's a 295. I'm going to say it's a 295. But anyway, another dual PCB card. Could be the 290 where it's dual PCB. 6-pin, 8-pin. Heatsink was actually sandwiched between the two PCBs. Single SLI slot. You can see that the fan comes out the other side. So there's that. And then another old school one, really. And this is the 3870X2, and this was at the point when AMD they stuck a pair of graphics chips on, and this was to try and keep up with some of the NVIDIA cards back in the day. It was a leaf blower, it was very loud, but it did have quite a bit of punch. This was also part of the reason why water cooling really started to take off, because they got obscenely hot. Now that sounds rather familiar, doesn't it? Anyway, so we've got that. So that's just some of the graphics cards I got. They're the ones that I brought out. I've even got old things like this cooler. It's actually a Thermalright Ultra. Back in the day, this was kind of like head to toe with one of the Noctua coolers. And one of the fans that I certainly remember loads of issues in were the Xilinx Red Wings. And back then they were like the cheap, really good static pressure fans that everyone had on their heat sinks, and because the Thermalright Ultra didn't come with fans, you had to buy them separately, and we always used to run those. So I've even got, you know, older kit like this, and then I'm trying to move it all out of the way, and then motherboards. This is probably what I would consider to be the best X58 motherboard ever made, maybe. If you're an overclocker, more than likely. It was the Gigabyte board that High Cookie was allowed to kind of run away with and do what he wanted to, and they stripped it back so you only had what you really needed. I actually got a 990X to 6 gigahertz with this exact board. I've still got the 990 as well. I dry iced it. It's an obscenely good board, to be fair. So we can bring this type of thing back. I'm just going to move it to the side. But then I've also got old stuff like this. This is an MSI, and it's a P35 chipset. This is back in the days when we had a North Bridge and a South Bridge. You know, God forbid, can you remember that? Ribbon hard drive for IDE hard drives, dual channel memory. I've got a selection of CPUs that I can put in this, quite literally things like I've got E6600, I've got an E6850, I've got some of the smaller dual core, you know, the tiny dual core ones like the E2140, the ET160, I've got an E6850. There's a lot of the stuff from over the years I've either kept or things have come up ridiculously cheaply. Like my E6850, I know goes well over 4 gigahertz. The one I've got does about 4.3, 4.4 if you want to start ragging the edge off of it. But I got that for pennies just because someone needed to get rid of their rig and the CPU people didn't want. And it was just one of those weird things, and I ended up acquiring it. And I did start overclocking because I've got an original Asus Rampage upstairs, the 775 one. And I just ended up acquiring CPUs because I was playing around with old school overclocking. And I never did it on camera. I was just doing it for the fun of it, for myself, to kind of keep my interest in the hardware going. So that's one of the reasons why I've got so much of the old stuff lying around. It's one of the things I always intended on benching them for the OC 3D bench team. I never really got round to it, but I'm looking at the overclock board here, this Gigabyte one here now, thinking it looks sad, it needs to be sub-zero. But I quite like this MSI board just because of the crazy copper North Bridge heatsink on these, because we used to put 1.7 volts through these North Bridges to keep the keep our front side bus high, because my E6850 does like 525 front side bus, you know, and we're going way back when, oh my god, 4 gigahertz was an amazing milestone to get to. Some CPUs would do like 500 times 8, and then if you had a Q6600, it was normally about 437 times 9, that type of thing. But anyway, so this is really where I cut my teeth with overclocking and just general hardware nerdness, because this was the stuff I was buying with my weekly or monthly wage packets, depending on what sort of time we were doing. And it was, especially with P35 and the 775 socket, this is way before my time of ever being anything, even a reviewer to do with Overclock 3D. I was just a proper hardware nut doing all this kind of things that you guys used to. So if you want to, if you like the kind of idea of me explaining probably what's going to end up being a history lesson, then let me know. But I'm not going to show you this MSI board any longer. I think before Asus start moaning I've not shown any Asus motherboards, I showed a load of your graphics cards. And if Gigabyte moan I've not shown any of their graphics cards, well, to be fair, I haven't fucking got any. So, in his best Jim Davidson. Anyway, so, yeah, let's move on. Okay then, peeps. So you've seen the kit. So now is the time that you need to click the link underneath to the OC3D forums, or go and take a look at the Tiny Tom Logan Facebook page, or maybe even post underneath, because I do read all the comments. And that's about your thoughts on this. Now, there's obviously a couple of avenues that we can go down. There is we can just have a, you know, weekly or fortnightly quick look at one of these bits of kit and maybe compare it with like some of the specs that we could have nowadays, just like, you know, looking at the specs between the 295, for example, and, you know, the current day 690 for you know, for example, older motherboard specs with newer motherboard specs and layout and slots, you know, stuff that we don't use anymore, like legacy, that type of thing. Because if we started doing like full-on reviews, then we'd obviously do the P35, we'd have to put a completely new drive, fresh install, freshly install all the benchmarks. Some of them might not even work because of driver problems and stuff like that, but it would be a fresh install, so I'd have to spend time doing that, putting all the benchmarks on. And then one of the things that you do need to consider is if I'm spending time doing this, I can't be spending time doing the stuff that I should be, which is the new stuff, and that's technically the reason why the site is here in the first place. This is just something the vendors will humour, but they're not going to be particularly interested in pushing a graphics card that you can't buy anymore, like the 260 for example, even though it's got a lovely sexy backplate and stuff. They're not going to have any interest in really pushing this. So this is just something different for me to do and for you to watch, because as I said, the TBT thing probably won't get picked up in a big way with many other people. But not only your thoughts on the hardware that I've got here and that I've spoken about, but maybe even if things do progress, maybe the hardware that you'd like me to keep my eye out for. And this is another mental thing, because I obviously don't buy the hardware that I review, but with the older stuff, I'm more than likely going to have to buy it just to make a video with it. But one of the things that you need to remember is I actually like all this, you know, this kit, the stuff in general. So if it's something pretty interesting, like I've been searching around trying to find a cheap 295 that is single PCB, whereas this is the dual PCB version. So I've been trying to find a cheap version of that, because I obviously don't want to spend an absolute fortune, because I'm not a millionaire or anything by any stretch of the imagination. But things like that, because you know, the comparison between one 295 and an identical one, but it's just single PCB, that's the type of thing that I could be interested in looking at myself. So yes, I am pretty open to all thoughts, even if they are, don't waste your time, Tom, just show us new stuffs. So yes, bring it to me, peeps. So don't forget, Tiny Tom Logan Facebook, OC3D forums, or if you're really lazy, just post underneath. But either way, I am going to be very, very interested in your feedback. I nearly said force back then. Anyway, feedback. Nom nom nom. So this, my dear fellows, is Tiny Tom Logan doing his very best news impression for you. Out.